Hey guys, it's Charlie with Charlie Slybox. That was my Max Potion imitation. Hey guys, so anyway, I am here today. I'm going to tie you a foamulator. This is sort of a variation of a stimulator, and really my variation of a foamulator for that matter. Pattern that I've been sort of playing with this last year. I tied it to use down on the Rio Grande for that kind of medium-sized junior salmon fly. In just a buoyant, mid-sized dry dropper pattern that also crosses pretty well for stoneflies, hoppers, that kind of thing. And the coolest thing about this fly is I'm going to tie this on a new hook from Tiemco. This hook here is let's see what exactly it's called, Tiemco 201 HBN. So like a 200R, but heavy. So this hook is one extra heavy wire, which has always sort of been the downfall of the conventional 200R, but it's also got a bigger, wider gap than the 200R had. And one of the coolest things about it is it's in that super sexy black nickel finish. Gosh, just a pretty hook. I'm excited about this. I've been kind of transferring a lot of stuff. Not that I tie a ton of stuff on regular 200Rs because of those downfalls, but there's a few things that Morningwood Hopper, for example, Morningwood Special, they're going on these now, and that's sort of happening at the factory level as well. So I'm pretty excited about this one. When exactly this will be available, I'm not positive, but I think pretty soon. At any rate, gosh, full size range, so size 4 to size 22 as well. But cool hook, and we're going to tie this foamulator on it. So let me grab a few parts here. I'm tying you a size 12. Obviously, tie whatever size you like. This lends itself well, from large to medium, smallish medium. I'd tie this down to maybe a 14. But a fly with a lot of surface area. It's going to hold up droppers and float through rough water, fishing out of a boat. It's going to be a fly that you don't have to maintain a ton. And honestly, I think it's probably a little easier, all said and done, easier to tie than a regular stimulator. So, at any rate, what we're going to do, I should also mention this hook is 2 extra long rather than the 3x long that a regular 200R is. So, slightly shorter, bigger gap, heavier wire, sexy black. What can you argue with? That's a darn good looking hook. At any rate, I'm going to get started here. So what I'm going to do is I am using some of my friend Stephen Hankins from Magpie Materials thread. This is his Magpie thread. This is 72 denier, and this is brown. I'm going to tie a brown one, obviously. So use whatever color you like. But I'm a big fan of this 72 denier. It's a very flat-lying polyester thread. So I'm going to start this at about 75%. And I'm going to make just a nice even thread base down to about even with the barb. If I hang that thread right there, even with the barb. And right there I'm going to make a little layer of thread, kind of back and forth a couple of times. And what I'm going to use for the body here is some 3mm tan foam. And I've cut this piece, you can see here, it's about the thickness, I'll give you a better angle there, about the thickness of the hook gap, or about the width of the hook gap. And I've cut it, 1.5 inches or so long. And what I've done is I've just knocked the corners off back here with my scissors. And what I'm going to do to round that up a bit, I'll try to do this up here where you can see it, is I'm going to hit that with a lighter and then just give it a little pinch and kind of round that up a bit. Give you a better view there. So before I tie that down, what I want to do is put just a little shot, if I can get it to come out of my bottle here. Here we go. A little shot of superglue on that thread base. And then I'm going to pick up my piece of foam, and I want about, it's maybe just short of a half a shank length, maybe a half shank length worth of foam sticking off the back. But I'm going to lay this right on top and bind it down with 6, 7, 8 turns of thread just stacked up right on top. Make sure it's right where you want it because that glue is going to grab and anchor that all down. Now I'm going to lift this front end up and I'm going to come forward right up to about where I started my thread, right up to about that 70% point. And I want to take, at that point, a piece of copper wire, a fairly long piece. We're going to use this wire for more than just the rib. So I'm going to tie this in, and I'm going to wrap back over it right up to the front edge of that foam. Now, one of the things when you tie this fly, you can see when you put this piece of foam in, it's in the way. It's hanging out up here. It's going to be in the way during the whole rest of the fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of wire and I'm going to wrap it around the foam 2 times, and then back in my material spring, and just loop it through there, and that'll hold that back out of the way while I tie the rest of the fly. You can see I didn't do that very tightly. It's just holding it out of the way. So it'll, solve the problem. If you got a problem, solve it. All right. So now for the body on this, gosh, all kinds of stuff you can use, and obviously, tie these in a ton of colors. For this brown one, I'm just going to use brown Superfine. So I'm going to take and put, what turns out, in the realm of Superfine is a fairly heavy application of dubbing. And I may need to go back and add some more. But I try not to have to do that. That's my least favorite thing to watch on YouTube, is somebody dubbing one wrap of dubbing at a time. Dub, wrap, dub a little more, wrap. Not efficient. I don't like it. I don't like it, friends and neighbors. Don't do it. Don't let yourself be that guy. And if you are that guy, come on, man. So I'm going to dub this body. And I'm going to build a bit of a taper. You can see I can kind of work back and forth. And this is one of the nice things about Superfine dubbing, is you can kind of control the shape pretty easily. And once I finish that shape, I'm going to wrap up to the hook eye and back to the front edge of the body again. Now for the body hackle on this, I've got this sort of weird feather sitting on my desk. It's going to work nicely. This is a variant, is what they call this. You can see the bottom half of that, or the bottom end of that, has got some barring on it. Then it sort of just turns into a furnace feather, but it's got that badger stripe up the center. And then, oh look, it goes back to barred. So just nice variegation to it. This is one of my favorite saddles. I've tied with it a bunch. Now, if you don't have one of these, which you don't, because there's not very many of them, because I have them all, a regular brown or furnace saddle feather here will work fine. So I'm going to strip the butt end, and I'm going to tie this in right at the front edge, and I'm going to wrap this, palmer wrap this, just evenly spaced turns right up to the base of that foam. And you can see that hackle, let me give you a little turn here, it's just slightly bigger than the hook gap. So it's about a hook gap width to start with, and then we're going to wrap it over that dubbed body. So that makes that hackle gain a little length. Now I'm going to pick up my piece of wire, and I just hold that piece of foam back, and I'm going to catch that hackle with the wire. And I'm just going to spiral forward just like you would on a normal stimulator. Just spiral forward through that hackle and tie that off up here at the front. Break that out of there. It's fine wire, no big deal. And then I'm going to come in and trim this feather out back here as well. Alright, so now I want to bump right up to the front edge here. I'm going to pull this piece of foam forward, and you can give it a little bit of a stretch, not much. But I'm going to bind it down again right at the front edge of that abdomen. Like so. Alright, now I'm going to lift this butt end. I'm going to bring my thread up to just behind the hook eye and then back off the eye just a little bit. And I'm going to tie that foam down one more time there. And then this section, this last section that we just made, I'm going to just cross hatch that. I don't need to compress it down completely, but I'm going to anchor it down a bit so it's up out of the way. So you can see what we've got going on here now. Now for the wing, I'm going to use some polypropylene macrame yarn. And this is, conventionally you would use, elk hair or deer hair. This macrame yarn is much more buoyant than either of those and remains buoyant for much longer than either of those. So I'm going to take this chunky yarn, and this is Grizzly Bear, Smoke, and Black, I think is what I've got mixed together here. Sort of making it elk hair colored. And what I want to do is I'm going to take a fairly good sized clump of this, and I'm going to fold it in half and make a loop like so. And I can kind of roll that in my fingertips to kind of pinch that down a bit. And every now and again you'll lose a strand, no big deal. I'm going to take this chunk of yarn, and when I tie it in, I want to tie it in with the loop sideways. Not this way, but this way. I want to tie it in sideways. And I'm going to measure it back to just the end of the foam body. And then I'll bind that down with a nice band of thread there. I lift those butt ends up and clip those out of there. Like so. Got a few short ones in there. Alright. So now I'm going to grab, let's see, what am I going to do next? Find my hackle feather here. I'm going to grab my hackle feather again. And I'm going to strip the butt end to it. And you can see I'm just up to the furnace. Generally speaking here, I'd say use Grizzly hackle. Or you could tie brown all the way through, or brown dyed Grizzly. Or Grizzly dyed brown, as that might be. But I'm going to tie this feather in on the near side, with the outside facing forward. So now I'm going to take some medium-sized sexy floss, and this is amber colored. And I'm going to take, a fairly long strand here. I'm going to tie this in on my near side first. So I'm going to catch it at the front edge of the body. This has got like a weird little split in it. Let's get that out of there. I'm going to tie this in from the front edge of the body, base of the wing there, and wrap over it right up to the front edge of that extended piece of foam, like so. Now I'm going to trim this leg just beyond the end of the foam, and I can use the other half of this strand to repeat the process in reverse on the far side. And you don't have to worry about being exactly in the right spot here, because you are able to sort of tweak this around and maneuver it into position. We want it right along the sides, like so. So you can see we've got nice wide X legs, and if you are so inclined, you could trim that other leg to length now as well. These front legs trim down just a bit. It's a nice big proportionally shaped X. Now I'm going to take some more brown Superfine, but actually before I do, one thing I like to do on these, because we've got a lot of stuff tied down there on that foam base, so I want to take a little shot of thin Superglue and put it right down on that thread base. And what that'll do is that anchors the ends of that yarn. That yarn is slick, so it'll anchor the ends of that yarn and just give us a nice solid base. Also kind of anchors that foam to the hook shank, so we don't get twist, which is what makes these big foamy flies come apart. So I'm going to apply another long thin layer of Superfine here. And one of the nice things is we've got sort of everything encompassed, bound down on either end. We've got the wing as a border on the back, and the foam as a border on the front. So we're going to get a really nicely shaped thorax here, because it's going to have a nice sharp edge. So I'm going to start at the front and dub up to the base of the wing. And then I'll square that off with that last little bit. I'm going to end right at the back end of that foam. You can see we got a nice even thorax. Now obviously you could have used a different color dubbing there too. Alright, now I'm going to pick up my hackle feather. I'm going to start to wrap it from back to front. Sort of tight spirals. I want that dubbing to still show through, and obviously this is brown on brown, so it's not going to show through as well as if it was brown hackle over orange dubbing perhaps, but you get the idea. And I'll tie that off just behind that foam, get it anchored in with 3 or 4 tight turns, trim that out. Loose one there. You can see how nice and dense that hackle collar came out. Now to finish this off, I'm not going to whip finish here behind the foam. I'm going to lift this up and bring my thread in front, and I want to sneak a little thread head between the hook eye and the foam. And what this will do is twofold. It's going to lift that foam just slightly off the hook eye, which will make it easier to thread when we go to tie the fly on. But the other thing that it does, and keep this in mind on a lot of flies, the other thing that this does is it keeps that piece of foam angled like that, so that when you're fishing the fly, when you mend, rather than it digging in, you've got a planing surface here for it to sort of skate. So twitching the fly, or even just mending it, it'll keep the fly on top of the surface. That's the bow of the boat. That'll keep the fly on top of the surface a little better. So then I'll come in and I'll whip finish. So I'll set up my whip finisher, slide that piece of foam back out of the way, Tie my whip finish, pull them up from the bottom, trim my thread out, and I'm going to trim this front end of this foam, oh, again, you know, about equal distance to the back end, into just a nice square little end. Now you can singe that down if you want to. You know, it depends on if I am having a moment of nothing better to do kind of thing. Let me lower this down just a bit for you. A huge matter of makes no difference, but if you want to melt that and cut around those corners, you can certainly do that as well. Now, one thing that I do like to do, you can see that wing is fairly narrow and fairly tall. I like to spread that out side to side, and that's why we tied it in with the loops sideways. This is going to give us a ton of surface area up here. And one of the things, you know, if you fish these macrame yarn flies, the more you fish them, the more fish you catch on them, the better they end up floating. You know, it's easy to keep dry. A little dab of Flyagria in there, you know, solves the problem pretty easily. But as this yarn gets ratted up, the kinkier it gets, and the more twisted and ragged it gets, the more surface area you get out of it. So you can see how I just twisted that wing up, and that's given us a nice wide wing profile across the top of the fly. You can kind of pull back and forth. There we go. We're getting nice and ratty now. Turn that around so you can see that side. You can see how big and wide that wing became. And that is my version of the Foamulator. Pretty easy fly, and you can see where there's a billion options to kind of change things up. Change the colors of the rubber legs, change the colors of the foam, change the colors of the dubbing, change the colors of the hackle, change the color of the thread. You know, you certainly could have put a little orange tag back here at the bend of the hook back in here before you started if you wanted a little hot spot. But a pretty quick, easy, stimmy alternative, as it were, that honestly floats better. And on that super cool new Tiemco hook, the 201 HBN. So there you go. That's my contribution for the day. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Again, if you need anything, charlieslybox.com. Check it out. You know, we've got lots of cool stuff on there. And that's the store that we all spend every day in. Maybe you should come spend some time with us. Give us a call if we can answer questions. I appreciate you watching. You guys take care.